Take three. Well, we've had problems with the broadcast, and so then we just had something happen. We don't even know what it was, but um, God is still good, and we're all still here. So I hope that you are having a good day and a good year starting. I hope you have a great year coming, and we've started and we've done almost the whole podcast, and then we had to reboot. So you're going to see some of this already cooked, and then we're going to put it back in and just warm it up. But all I did basically was take cauliflower, slather it in butter. I threw some salt and pepper on it, and you can throw garlic on it if you want to. I like garlic on my cauliflower and broccoli. And I'm going to put this in just to heat it up, and then I'm going to tell you what we did for the uh, mix, and then we're going to get into the program. I'm only going to put it on like 2 minutes. Okay. There we go. We've been talking about like Adam and Eve in the garden, and we've talked about identity. And if I had to really go to a theme of January's podcast, it's basically identity, who we recognize, who God recognizes, and what we do with our identity that kind of shapes our atmosphere and creates atmospheres and stuff.
Right.
So,
And the biggest difference is we have to remember we need to think of our identity the way that Christ thinks of our identity.
yes, and that's hard to do in our human
Yes,
minds
very
because
much.
we are accustomed to seeing downfalls of people, but especially ourselves.
Right.
You know, at least a lot of people are. A good amount, probably most people. Very few people afford themselves grace in today's world and society, and
Right.
probably from years before. I don't know. I wasn't born in the 1800s, so I don't know how grace was back then.
We tend to bring baggage with us when God wants us to just leave it behind, you know?
Absolutely, we do. And I would encourage that as we're going into the new year, even not. I don't do it as New Year's resolutions, but I do think that if we begin to afford ourselves grace and see things differently as circumstances arise, and look at the broader picture of it and find a silver line, our our circumstances and our atmosphere would change, but so will our perception.
Right.
Today, I really want to talk about Adam and how the consequences of his sin, right? So we know that he was driven out of the garden. He wasn't just driven out of the garden, he literally had other consequences, like Eve would have pain during childbirth. He would till the land, and he would have to work the land. But the one thing that did not change, it did not separate him from God, only from the garden. And we know that in the Bible, name denotes nature. And if name denotes nature, Adam, meaning humanity or from the dust of the earth, God didn't change Adam's name. He changed, like when the nature of a person changed, like from Abram to Abraham or Jacob to Israel, when assignment or things changed for that person, God changed their name from one to a different name, right? He never changed Adam's name. Never. And if we realize that our identity isn't wrapped up in our sin as much as our purpose is wrapped up in the nature of Christ.
Right.
Sin has consequences in Adam when he was driven from the garden, right? But the consequences was not rejection.
Right.
It was removal from the garden, but it was not rejection.
And it's also God may give us consequences, and it's not to hurt us; it's to teach us, and maybe even to further our growth in Him, and to understand that He's always with us. But we've got to answer for some of the things that we do, and He does it in a loving way, not like humans that want to browbeat you to death.
Well, he didn't walk into the garden and say, Adam, you sinner, where are you? You know, he called Adam because the location of Adam changed, not the relationship, right? The location.
Right.
Now, in Adam's mind, it kept him because he was like, I'm naked, and he didn't want to walk. That was Adam changing his mind
But never
because of
God.
shame. But God did not. God still, like we said in the previous podcast, God still came to Adam and wanted to pursue the walk with him.
Right. And he's our firm foundation. He doesn't move. We may move, teeter-totter back and forth sometimes, but he never does.
Right. He did drive Adam from Eden, but he did not drive Adam out of his heart. Right. He was still in access to the Father. And a true father will cover you. And so one of the things that we talked about on the other one, but to a little bit different point, is like we talked about, the animals were made on the same day that Adam would need the covering. But God covered him with the animals. Now Adam covered himself with the fig leaves, but God covered him with the animal covering, the sacrifice. Like Jesus is the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. He had, before Adam ever was created or sinned, he already put in place the covering for Adam. The same as he has done for us, right? So if we look at and we let our identity change because of sin, that's not God, that's us. It says in Genesis 5, verse 1 and 2, in the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him, male and female created he them, and he blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. He never changed his mind, right? Adam stayed Adam because it was sin that altered the behavior, but it didn't alter the sonship, right? God was still the Father,
Right.
and we can even change positions, but it does not keep God from calling us sons and daughters. My husband tells a story about my dad, and my dad always called him son, but my husband didn't call my dad like most of the people in the family because of his upbringing, right? But my dad never stopped calling him son. He never called him, like, hey, David. He might have called him by name every once in a while, but he usually would say, hey, son, and when he would greet him, he would greet him as, hey, son, because that's the heart of a father.
Right. In that respect, I feel like your dad knew where your husband was coming from, respected that he didn't call him dad, but it didn't change his mind to continue calling him son, just like our Father in heaven doesn't.
And just the same as like some people say, which is kind of off topic, but still in, that Judas, he hung himself in all of this, and then Jesus went to hell and conquered death, hell, and the grave. Some people argue that maybe Adam could have got saved. Some people argue that maybe Adam couldn't have got saved. Judas. But really, who's to know what Adam's sacrifice of animals and that type of stuff to pay for his atonement? And if we believe Adam is in hell or he's in heaven, really that's none of our business, first of all, because that's up to Adam and God. But I believe that God made as much provision for Adam as he did for us.
Absolutely.
And even in the sacrifice of the animals, that for the blood covering, right, of sin. And the same is for us, no matter what the sin or the timing of the sin, God has made provision. He's given us, and it cannot be taken back. He gave his son to redeem the world, to restore. He is a restorer. That is one of his personalities, is to restore.
Right.
He loves. He pursues with passion. All the things that we can think of that a father would do is in Christ, is in God.
Right. And think about, I don't know the right way to say that, how easy his ultimate sacrifice, what he did on the cross for us, that we can go anywhere and ask forgiveness. We don't have to go and sacrifice an animal, go kill something and have the blood or anything. All we have to do is remember that he shed his blood for us, and that we can bow wherever we are and ask for forgiveness, or knowing that we're worthy, that we're his children. Right. And so, and like you said, it's not up to us who gets into heaven and who doesn't. It's up to us to make sure that we do.
That we do. We have to answer for us.
Yes.
For sure. Even in the Bible with Moses was disobedient. And went against God when God commanded him to speak to the rock, right? Well, if we look at that, his consequence was that he could not lead the children into the land of promise, right? But God still buried Moses in a place that nobody knows. God followed Moses even in the disobedience, and he will do the same with us. We are a product of his love, not of his chastisement necessarily. I know that we are a product of chastisement when his chastisement of peace is upon us. I get all that. But we're not a product of, maybe chastisement might not be the word, we're not a product of his wrath necessarily. Now, do I think that there are people that are a product of his wrath? Sure. But that's not really what he spoke over us. And it's not what he spoke over Adam. He had foreknowledge that Adam would make mistakes. That's the reason why I believe the covering, right? But it wasn't coercion, it was foreknowledge. And there's a big difference. He has foreknowledge of when we're going to make mistakes, but he covers us. And he sent a covering before we made them.
You know, and that's why I always tell people whenever I see fear the Lord in the Bible, I take out the word fear and I put in respect, because that's really what it means. Respect him, because he, like I said, he loves us unconditionally. And so if we respect him and understand his authority and his love for us, then it makes us want to sin less. It makes us want to be less disobedient. It doesn't always work, but at least the desire is there to do better.
Right. Well, and even so, like, even just proven into our desire to do better, I believe it's because he's still with us, right?
Right.
He's still, if we have a desire to do good, he's with us, right? And even in Hebrews, it says that he will never leave us or forsake us, right? And so even with Adam, even when he drove him out of the garden, he didn't leave him, and he didn't change his identity. And he's not going to do that. We may all have consequences, and we may all get some forgiveness and not suffer consequences that we rightly should because of the grace of God. But we all have a promise, and that is he will never leave us and he will never forsake us. He will go with us. And so I hope that you know that no matter where you're at in your life, that God is with you. He loves you. He pursues you.
You want to?
Yeah, we'll show you this right here. I did sour cream. I use lactate because it is dairy free, and I use mayo. I use a little more sour cream than I did mayo. I use salt, pepper, garlic, and I use 2 different types of cheese. In this case, I use mozzarella and I use mild cheddar. You can use whichever one you want. You may use something totally different, but it is pretty darn good. And then I just did it as like a, oh, and we definitely slathered that in butter. Can you see it? But this is just like a little dip, I guess. So this is something I can actually take a bite out of. Yay. So hope you have a great day on purpose.